Welcome, everyone, to our podcast where two dads talk about Disney movies while drinking some very good drinks and letting the conversation take us wherever it may go. I am Eric.
And I'm Jeff.
And we are those two dads. And you're probably asking yourself, well, why the hell are they qualified to talk about Disney movies and why should we listen to them? Well, I guess I could start. I'm 36 years old and I have a 2-year-old daughter at home, and we are getting into watching all the fun stuff on Disney Plus. Having grown up in the 90s, pretty much around in the heyday of Disney animated motion pictures. Disney obviously has been doing this since the 1930s, but it really took on a life of its own in the 90s and has blown up into what it is today. Jeff, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I was born in 1984. I grew up in the heyday, as you called it, churning out hit after hit after hit. And now I also have a 2-year-old son, and we've been watching Disney Plus constantly. And we're going through and trying to watch the old classics. Some of my favorites when I was growing up, some of the old classics as well. And he's loving it, some more than others. And I think we'll get into a few of those in some of these episodes here and go through and talk about the best, the worst, our favorites, and go from there.
Perfect. And there's something our listeners should probably know. So Jeff and I have known each other since our freshman year of college, and I think we've argued with each other on pretty much every topic ever since.
And I've always been right.
Jeff has always apparently been right, even when he's wrong. Now here we are. So we're hoping that this banter around these Disney films will give us something else to argue about, or at least dive into some fun and interesting points. First movie that we're going to tackle here is The Lion King. But before we do that, I realized I never mentioned the name of our show, and there's a very, very valid reason for not mentioning the name of our show. It's the fact that we don't have a name for our show. A couple of ideas that were thrown out there, and I think we've narrowed it down to 3, right, Jeff?
We have 3 choices, and I think we're going to ask for help in selecting the actual official name of the podcast.
That's awesome. So we'll post that on social media. The 3 names that you'll get to choose from are pretty traditional, straightforward dads on Disney. And the only reason for that is Disney Dads was already taken. The other one is a play on Disney on Ice, which was Disney on the Rocks. And we'll get into the reasoning for that in just a few minutes.
Which I think makes sense.
And Jeff, the last one is one that you came up with earlier tonight.
I have to give credit where credit is due. My dad came up with this one. My dad is a great pun guy. He comes up with puns for everything. And he came up with Disney Under the Influence.
That's amazing. Disney Under the Influence. So DUI for short. Maybe a tad politically incorrect, but it's a solid name regardless. So those are your 3 choices: Dads on Disney, Disney on the Rocks, or Disney Under the Influence. And the reason there is a little bit of an alcohol vibe to some of these names is for the fact that we're going to be drinking during these episodes.
And before.
What time did you start drinking today, Jeff?
Well, it was a really nice day out. I was out at the pool and started my first beer around noon. So not too bad. Not bad at all.
I just started drinking, so I may not be as in the bag as Jeff, but I'm sure it'll pick up because I am drinking a single malt scotch, the Balvenie Double Wood, 12 years aged. So I'm going to be drinking that tonight.
Very nice. I'm going with a bourbon. I went with Maker's Mark. I thought it was a classic bourbon for a classic movie.
Beautiful segue. I like it. So that classic movie that we're talking about is The Lion King. We're going to start it off strong. Big leadoff hit right here. So we're going to go through the movie. This conversation may dovetail into several other topic areas, and we're just going to kind of wing it a little bit. But where were you, Jeff? When did you first see The Lion King? Did you get to experience it in the movie theater when it first came out as an 11-year-old?
Yeah, I did. So I have a younger sister, 6 years younger than me. So when this movie came out, she was, 5 or 6. We definitely went to the theater. I remember going. I remember seeing the movie. I remember really, really liking The Lion King as a kid. watched it a million times on VHS. Yeah, always enjoyed it, loved it. My sister liked it. Yeah, I mean, it's a classic. So, definitely saw it in theater. I don't know what else to say, man.
It's all right. Yeah, no, I saw it in the theater too. And the most unforgettable part, I would say, is, well, first off, when I was 11, I also have a younger sister. She's about 3 years younger than me. And so we went to the theater and we were late. So we got there just the tail end of the previews and had to find a seat. So we're sitting in the second row of the movie theater. And if anybody who's ever seen the opening scene of The Lion King, I mean, it's as epic gets. It is the circle of life wailing at the very beginning to set the bar very, very high. And then you get to all the animals, just the music. It's emotional. And then as soon as Rafiki, the baboon, takes baby Simba and raises him up, the screen just goes boom. And it says The Lion King in bold red print on screen. And that is I still get goosebumps thinking about it. It's a movie-going experience I will surely never forget.
Yeah, it's epic. I mean, it's an epic intro from a world-class Elton John. You're talking a superstar, a world-famous musician that just came out and did the soundtrack for a cartoon. It's crazy. So Elton John comes out, you get Circle of Life, it comes right out of the gate. They set up the entire movie with that huge just boom.
As soon as that big boom Lion King hits, we cut right to the villain. They give you Scar out the gate. I got to tell you, and I joked about it earlier that, he's a guy named Scar because he has a scar on his face, but he is an all-time Disney villain. I mean, he wants to murder everyone, family, friends, doesn't matter. He wants to murder everyone immediately.
Yeah, he's an all-timer. And the best part rewatching The Lion King is really going through and noticing the introductions to each character is incredible. When they shoot back over to Scar and he's playing with the mouse and he's taunting it, and then Zazu comes in and, Scar doesn't care about Simba at all. His character is completely set up in that first couple minutes. The intro, when you finally meet Mufasa, he shows up, strong character, obviously the good guy. You'll learn a lot right away from these characters. They waste no time really introducing everybody really well immediately.
Yeah, they allude to the fact, because Mufasa shows up because Zazu comes in there and says, hey, dude, why weren't you at your nephew's presentation? Everybody else was there. You're his uncle. You're kind of a jerk for not being there. And then Mufasa shows up, and they actually allude to the fact that the two of them went at it at one point, and maybe Mufasa is the reason for that scar in and of itself. I think the line is something along the lines of, I can never match you in terms of strength. We know that already. And then they set the table there that there's definitely some headbutting between the two brothers.
Yeah, he would never challenge him. He always said he got the smarts. He, talks about the gene pool of how he was on the shallow end in terms of the brute strength. But even Mufasa being obviously that brute strength, but he shows in the intro while doing the Circle of Life when he is up on the top of the Pride Rock, when he's introducing Simba to the kingdom, his hair, his mane is blowing in the wind. But he gives like a little smile to Sarabi. Like he's really happy. He's a proud dad. And I think that really kind of hit me now watching it. As a kid, it was all about Simba and the music and the fun and the, Timon and Pumbaa being funny. But watching it again, it's like, man, like Mufasa is really proud to have a kid. He just wants to be a good dad. It's really cool.
It is. And that's what it's all about. There are certain scenes, and we'll get to them in a little bit, that as you said, they hit harder when you have a kid of your own and everything. But it kind of an interesting point that it alludes to, and wondering about the father-son dynamic of the Lion Kingdom in The Lion King. So the next scene, Mufasa is in the lion's den with Sarabi, and they're laying there sleeping. But there's also maybe 6 or 7 other female lions living in the den with them. there are no other male lions.
No, that's the way it is, right? With lions? Isn't that like how it works in the real animal
I
kingdom?
don't know. Is that how it works? Because I love lions, but I didn't know this about lions. Is that the case? So is Mufasa technically Nala's father?
Yeah. I mean, he's got to be, right? I mean, this isn't Jurassic Park. Life's not finding a way here. This is Mufasa's the only male other than Scar. I mean, unless Scar is Nala's father that we don't know.
Unless her father is off somewhere else and just rolled through. We don't know. I mean, he's kind of, Mufasa may have a Hugh Hefner thing going on with this situation, and it's just an underlying thing I noticed in rewatching this. Something I wouldn't have picked up as a kid, but I'm noticing now.
Yeah.
Maybe things are getting a little weird, but hey, that's what this is all about. Observing things that we're catching now as adults that we didn't pick up on as kids.
I noticed it watching it again. I noticed that he was the only male other than Scar, and he lets Scar kind of hang around for some reason, even though there's literally no other male lions. Zazu even makes that throwaway joke, like, he'd make a great throw rug. Let's just get rid of Scar. Get rid of him. Why is he here?
He serves no purpose.
He might be Nala's father.
That's a bombshell.
Could be.
But isn't there, and we'll get into the sequels eventually. I know very little about the sequels, but I feel like Scar has a nephew or another nephew or a son in the sequels.
Yeah, I haven't seen the sequels in years. I have no idea. I have watched a couple episodes of The Lion Guard, which is a sequel television show. It's a Disney Junior show, I think.
Okay.
We have watched a couple episodes in that. And in there, Simba actually has a daughter, an older daughter. So the cub that's held up at the end of Lion King is apparently a female.
Oh.
And she is set to be queen. He also has a son who's the second born, and then he becomes this Lion Guard thing that Scar used to be in the Lion Guard. It's pretty well set up, but I've only watched a couple episodes, so we'll have to maybe dive into that on another show.
I'm all about it. So moving along in the movie, Simba gets the whole everything the light touches speech. And then, he points out, well, what about that shadowy place over there? He's like, you must never go there. Don't ever go there. Please don't go there. It's like the push the red button kind of thing. And so Simba goes over to Scar's place and gets so cocky. He's like, hey, guess what? I'm going to be king someday. And Scar is locked and loaded. He's like, yeah, no, you're not.
He literally says that to the only person you should not be bragging about being the future king to.
It's
like, if Mufasa was going to teach you any lesson, it's not don't go to the shadowy area. It's do not mock your uncle Scar. Like, he is not taking this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's to the point where Simba says something about like, oh, everything light touches is going to be mine. And he's like, oh, yeah, well, I guess he didn't tell you about the elephant graveyard. Like, he's had that idea in motion for years. And he said, well, as soon as this kid brings that up, I'm sending him there because this is over. I'm not wasting any time here.
Yeah, he knows what Mufasa's speech is going to be, right? Like, he knows eventually Mufasa's going to teach him what his kingdom is. He's going to specifically tell him, don't go to the elephant graveyard. And Scar is going to tell him, just go there and I'll set a trap for you. It's classic villain. I'm not going to do the dirty work myself. And throughout the movie, Scar has several opportunities to do all his own dirty work. But he wants these hyenas, his henchmen, to do it for him every step of the way.
Yeah, Scar's a lion. Like, he's a lion. He can do whatever he wants.
Toss him off the side of the mountain.
That's it.
You're on top, and they're literally sitting on top of a mountain.
It's really the perfect crime in that scenario. I mean, yeah, some people, maybe Mufasa might point their finger at you, but really, it's like, look, I didn't even see him that day. He was on his way up. Listen to us. We're actually figuring out how Scar could have murdered Simba early on and ended the movie.
Well, I mean, if that's what he really wanted to do, he had ample opportunity. What I think he needed to do was really crush Mufasa, though. Also, like, it's not enough to kill Simba. He's just going to apparently maybe even have a kid with not even Sarabi. He might go in the lion den and be like, hey, it didn't work out with Simba. We're going to try again.
So from there, Simba gets the idea, grabs Nala and says, yeah, we're going to go to the watering hole. We're not going to the watering hole. We're going to go to the elephant graveyard. And on the way, Zazu throws out, Zazu, by the way, voiced by Mr. Bean, Rowan Atkinson, and one of the most criminally underrated voice acting roles ever, where he talks about them being betrothed to be married, the archaic concept of Simba and Nala getting married automatically. It's already been set. You have no say in the matter. Simba, being on the more progressive side, is like, yeah, no, that's not the plan, right?
And who is Zazu to tell him that?
Yeah, where did Zazu get off?
Well, that's like something you sit down with your kid and like explain one day, like when you're ready. Zazu running his mouth. Hey, let Mufasa tell Simba. He just told him about the kingdom. Like he just found out he's going to be king one day that morning.
Yeah, where's Zazu's place to tell Nala, like, yeah, you're going to be queen, and maybe save that moment for her mother to tell her. I don't know.
Again, like as a dad, that's something I'm like, wait, don't parent my kid. I'll tell him he's going to be king today. Let him have a day. Like, let him enjoy that. And then I'll tell him, listen, your life is kind of set in stone. You're going to be king. You're also going to marry your best friend. It's going to happen, but we'll get there. We don't have to do it right now.
Yeah, I'm surprised Simba could even perform. I just can't wait to be king at that point, right? He just found out about everything, and it's like, I got to sing this awesome song because I am so excited. And Zazu drops out on him. But to his credit, Simba gets out there and just crushes that song. This is obviously one of the more memorable parts of the movie, a part that is very big, huge performance. It's great on Broadway in the show.
That song is fun. It's what I remember probably most as a kid about the movie. What I actually, more than the movie, I actually remember that song in the video game. If you remember the Sega game where you had to flip the monkeys around and jump on the giraffe's head to kind of bounce through. It was like a puzzle in a game, and the whole time that song is playing in the background. And I remember that. It's just as fun now. It's one of the more colorful parts of the movie. Definitely catches the interest of my kid now. He loves that part of the movie. He loves all songs. Anytime a song comes on, he's all about it. But that scene, that whole song it's up there with any Disney song. Like if you're gonna make a best song Disney list from like the hero point of view, that's it.
Well, that takes me back to when we were in college, and our senior year, we would get together every Wednesday night with the townhouse across the sidewalk there, and we would do a power hour. For those of you who are uninitiated to the idea of a power hour, that is taking a shot of beer every minute for 60 minutes. Now, some people, like several of my friends from college, would sit there in front of a clock and wait for it to tick, and they get to that one and they just take a shot of beer. And it's a little sad to watch. It's not as fun. It is depressing, but in the early days of iTunes, Jeff over here was sort of a pioneer at LaSalle University. He was able to actually compile lists of 60-second clips of 60 songs and make custom Power Hour CDs. Now, for the younger listeners out there, a CD is a compact disc, and you put that into what is called a CD player, and then that would then play the music on there. And Jeff would create a 60-minute track with 60 clips, and we would have themes. We did songs from famous movies, we did songs from TV shows, and then one week it was Disney themed. You would put together a fantastic list of the Disney themes, and I distinctly remember when you get to the last 10 minutes of the Power Hour, you would do kind of an unofficial top 10.
Yeah, I would do a top 10 leading up to the final song, and I let the final song go for the full song. But yeah, we would get together once a week. Every week was a different theme. Yep. We would dress up. I remember you dressed up as Gaston.
I did, because I was sort of closer to clean shaven back then and skinnier. For his orange hunting gloves, I used our rubber dish cleaning gloves from the kitchen,
which were new in the package for some reason.
Because we never did dishes
or
cleaned. Yeah, but yeah, I was Gaston. You were dressed up.
I think I was John Smith from Pocahontas. I think I put like aluminum foil around my shirt to make it like a shield. The closest thing I can do to a costume last minute, because I had to actually make the CD. Everyone else was playing dress up, and I was upstairs grinding it out at the same time as studying for all my tests and exams and writing my lab reports and all the rest. I was also putting the CD together, so aluminum foil wrapped around was about the best I could do.
Well, I think the logic behind our costumes were I had a red polo shirt sitting in my dresser, and you probably had a powder blue polo shirt sitting in your dresser, because in 2006, that's what guys wore everywhere, polo shirts. That was it. And we made it work for our costumes.
We did, yeah. But those the hops were great. Every week was a new theme. Disney theme was one of my favorites. I can't tell you what it was in my top 10. I have no idea. I'd love to dig it up.
I'm confident I Just Can't Wait to Be King was in the top 10. That's why I brought this up.
It was probably there. I probably went with some classics too, like Wish Upon a Star or something like that to kind of kick it off. But I think I usually kept it kind of fun.
Oh, yeah. It's got to be up-tempo. It was a tough crowd. Maybe we do an Hour of Power episode one week. We revisit the Disney Power Hour and record ourselves going through the Disney songs.
Yeah, I'd love it. We should do that.
It actually fits perfectly with our theme. So back to the movie. Elephant Graveyard thing happens. We get to the three hyenas voiced by Whoopi Goldberg and Cheech Marin. And off the top of my head, the guy who does Ed, I mean, he giggles the whole movie, but he is a well-known voice actor, and his name is escaping me off the top of my head.
Yeah, I actually think he sang part of Scar's song. Although he was Ed and just kind of laughed and giggled throughout the movie, he was actually a significant voice actor, but I have no idea who he is.
Fantastic introduction to the hyenas. Mufasa shows up, saves Simba and Nala, and then has to have the death talk with Simba, teaches him about the kings of the past watching over them. They're the stars in the sky, which is a really cool concept. Just something I always like, a little nice touch, and then it obviously sets up for a major emotional scene later in the movie.
Absolutely. But going back to Scar and the hyenas, when Mufasa shows up to save Nala and Simba from being eaten basically by these three hyenas, he shows up, he saves the day, they start walking away. Who's standing on the rocks up behind them? Scar. What is he doing there? Like, if you have this plan, right? You're sending these cubs out, you know you've got hyenas in that elephant graveyard, like that no one has warned these cubs about. No one has said, don't go there because there's hyenas that like to eat lions. We don't mention that. So what is Scar doing? His job is to distract Mufasa. How are you letting the only person, lion, whatever, to save these cubs? How are you just letting him walk around and not distract him? Like, that's your job.
You had one job, Scar. That was it.
You're mad at the hyenas in the next scene, right? You're mad at them because they couldn't even finish off the cubs. But where were you?
This is a fantastic point. I never thought of this before until now. This movie would have ended very quickly had he just distracted Mufasa.
Or if he just killed Simba himself.
Yeah, but what he's doing, he's hiring a hitman. But no one in the history of anything has ever hired a hitman and then went with the hitman to the hit.
You don't watch the hit.
No.
You watch the news and hope that the hit happened.
And then you pretend to cry when...
Yeah, you have an alibi. Like, what's your alibi, Scar? Ed? Ed, was Scar here? He's just going to say yes. He sells you out the whole movie. He sells you out. Every time you ask him a question, Ed sells Scar out.
Well, apparently this wasn't Scar's master plan, however, because then he goes and sings Be Prepared, which very, very underrated in the grand scheme of Disney villain songs.
No, it's up there. Jeremy Irons singing Be Prepared. I mean, it's up there for me. Scar's one of my favorite villains ever. I think he just hits on every level. That song, I don't know if it's underrated, but I don't know where people actually rank it in terms of villain songs. It'd be interesting to go into that once we get a few more movies under our belt. I'd like to know where Be Prepared really ranks, because for me, Scar is one of the best Disney villains ever. So his song has to be up there.
His big plan, though, he's going to lure Simba into a gorge. He's going to start a wildebeest stampede. He knows he's going to get Mufasa to show up and save him again because he saw that happen in the elephant graveyard. And then he's going to just kind of let things happen. And hopefully Simba gets trampled, and hopefully he's in a position to let Mufasa get trampled. And that's pretty much what happens. By the way, the wildebeest scene, you mentioned the video game on Sega earlier, arguably the hardest part of the Sega video game.
Yeah, for sure. That was difficult. It's up there, not quite as difficult as the Battletoads surfboard jet ski level, and that was level 2.
Yeah, they went hard.
Battletoads, by far the hardest video game I've ever played. It's got to be up there.
I would argue the original Ninja Turtles game on Nintendo is the hardest video game of all time.
That one's impossible. The underwater levels are absolutely impossible. But yeah, the Stampede episode, or the Stampede level in the Sega game is, it's just impossible. I rarely got to adult Simba.
Yeah.
If that didn't get you, the next couple levels did, and you were done.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, like in the annals of video game history, there is the Ninja Turtles game that I mentioned where in the 3rd level, I believe, you have to swim underground and dismantle bombs before drowning while swimming through electric seaweed. The Battletoads level that Jeff had mentioned, and then there is the wildebeest stampede in The Lion King, where it's actually really cool in that you are looking at Simba head on, and he is running toward you with a crowd of wildebeest behind him, and you have to dodge rocks that you really can't see. You have maybe a second and a half to react to.
No, they like blink in front of you, and then you have to move left, right, or jump. And if you don't get the sequence correct, you're done. Now, back then, the video game, there was no randomized sequence. You had to memorize that sequence, or you had a guide in front of you that you bought in a magazine. You had to look and say, okay, here's the order. Or you just memorized it, and there were no saves. It's not like you could, I saved, I have 9 lives, and I'll just go back to my save point. If you died, you started right back in the beginning, squishing bugs in the first level.
No chance. So the wildebeest are coming. Mufasa shows up, grabs Simba, saves him. A wildebeest wipes out hard. There's one of them who's in a normal wildebeest stampede, and he just eats it. It's actually I kind of reacted to it when it happened. I went, oh Jesus!
Yeah, he hit hard.
Yeah, he just eats dirt. So that happens. Simba gets taken to safety on a tree branch, and then Mufasa climbs up, and then we get the iconic Scar moment where he could save Mufasa. Instead, dagger claws into the top of Mufasa's claws and hits the line, "Long live the king," and sends him.
Yeah, and Mufasa's eyes in that moment, like when he realizes Zazu was right. I should have got rid of this dude so long ago. And he just knew it's all over. But at least Scar in that moment actually took part in his plan, right? Like he was part of this plan. It was the exact plan that he had before. Like, I'm going to kill Simba. I'm going to lure him somewhere where he's just going to die naturally, either by hyenas or this time wildebeest. But I'm actually going to play a role this time. I'm going to bring Mufasa in. I'm going to throw him into the trap as well, instead of just sitting back and watching Simba get trampled and having Mufasa save the day. Like, he is at least learning from his mistakes.
Oh, yeah. If you want to get a job done right, you got to do it yourself.
Until he has a chance to finalize everything. He is down there with Simba, right? Mufasa's dead. No one else is around. He knocks out Zazu. So Zazu knows that Scar knocked him out cold. So Scar goes down where Mufasa's body is. Simba's laying there. And he tells Simba to run. Just kill him. Like, this is classic Bond villain laying out your whole plan and then not following through. Having Simba there, ready to go, all you had to do was kill him, but he couldn't quite do it. So then he tells the hyenas to go and do it for him, and obviously they fail, and Simba gets away.
Yeah, I think a lot of this episode is going to be us poking holes in the foresight of Scar in his master plan to become king. The idea that he knocks out Zazu, eat him. He toys with him. He keeps him around. What's crazier is he keeps him around. You don't keep around your key witness.
He's the only witness, and you physically knocked him out. Like when he comes to, he's going to be like, wait a minute. Scar definitely killed Mufasa. I understand he then locks him up for his own enjoyment, makes him sing songs. Does he ever let him out of that cage? Has Zazu been there for years?
He might have, but that's the thing, too, is if you ever look at the dynamics and the build of that cage, which is made of animal bones, Zazu could easily fit through those bars. But I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, we don't want to focus too much on plot holes versus character flaw. Scar not finishing his own job is a character flaw. It's not a plot hole. Zazu being able to fly through the bars, sure. I mean, animated cartoons are always going to have some level of disbelief, and you look at certain animals in The Lion King talk, other ones don't. Apparently they all can sing. I Can't Wait to Be King. But then the wildebeests are just mindless creatures who run and stampede. Like, couldn't Simba just be like, whoa, guys, like, just chill out right here, stop running, everything's fine?
That's a great point. That's like the Goofy Pluto theory that we've talked about,
Yeah.
Right? If providing Goofy is actually a dog and not a cow, but it's any animal, and it's the Pluto theory. Actually, it's why does Pluto exist and not talk? And everyone else is an animal, but they wear clothes and drive cars.
Did you just say Goofy is a cow?
That is what I was told by my wife a few weeks ago, and it blew my mind equally because his better half is Clarabelle.
Yes, he is in love with a cow. That does not make Goofy a cow. Goofy is clearly a dog.
That's what I thought.
I've got Goofy right here.
All right, let's look at Goofy.
I mean,
big old buck teeth.
How is he a cow? Look at the snout.
Yeah, I think he's a dog. That's why I said cow or dog.
Look at the ears.
But at the same time, he also walks on his hind legs and drives a car and has a son and is, he's, I don't know what Goofy is. But my point is the Pluto theory is Pluto exists as a dog in a world where there are other animals that are anthropomorphic human type thing. So getting back to Lion King, you have the wildebeest, which runs around mindlessly. And then you have Simba, who sings and talks.
Yeah, I mean, you have the grasshopper in the beginning of the movie with Simba chasing the grasshopper, and other Disney movies. You've got bugs that can talk and have
Jiminy Cricket.
Jiminy Cricket. You've got plenty of examples of bugs, other animals. So the inconsistency is obviously always there in Disney. But I believe that Goofy is a dog. Pluto is a dog. They just happen to be, one is slightly more intelligent than the other. But you brought up another point. Goofy has a kid.
Yes.
I forgot about that.
So I just saw a meme, and I'm going to read this, and I sent this to my wife the other day. Here we go. Goofy is the only classic Disney character who has had sex. Mickey has nephews. Donald has nephews. Goofy has a son. And he wasn't adopted. He looks just like him. Goofy has had sex. Goofy has known a woman biblically. Imagine what it must have looked like. Imagine what it sounded like. These are the things I think about when I wake up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat. That's how it reads. I didn't add that. That is exactly how it reads.
Gosh. That was pretty good. Is the mother Clarabelle?
I don't know. I can't remember. We're going to have to watch the Goofy movie because they definitely get into that in a Goofy movie where the kid's mom is.
Yeah, I feel like the mother left or something. I don't remember the Goofy movie all that well. I definitely saw it. I don't remember. I remember Max is the son, and he goes on some crazy adventure, and he's like skateboards. He's like a total 90s
It's
kid,
awesome.
right? Like Max is 90s kid. Like every cool kid in the 90s. Everyone, like the cool kid you wanted to be was Max.
Yep.
That's what I remember. I remember he just was a cool kid, skateboard and all, and I love Goofy. He's my all-time favorite. But is it Clarabelle? But every other character, every other Disney pal, they all have the same species as their significant other. You got Mickey and Minnie. You've got Donald and Daisy. I don't know who Goofy has.
That lends credence to the theory that Goofy may be a cow.
Nothing gives credence to Goofy being a cow.
Okay, fair enough.
Let's just end it there.
All right. So Scar, after Mufasa dies, after we get the most gut-wrenching scene in arguably one of the most gut-wrenching scenes in Disney history of Mufasa dead, Simba saying, "Dad, wake up, Dad, wake up." That is hard to watch now.
Hard to watch is right. I mean, it was tough as a kid. And I remember it being discussed by adults. Like, I remember my parents talking about, man, Mufasa dies. Like, it was almost, how is this movie rated G? Should we bring kids to see this movie? It's so devastating. Like, obviously other Disney movies are surrounded by parents dying, and we can go
Bambi
through those as well. Well, Bambi's obviously
Bambi similarly in that regard, and you don't see Bambi's mother after the fact, I don't think.
Yeah, it's somewhat off screen, right? Like Cinderella's father dies off screen. Like everyone kind of has these step parents and orphans or whatever it may be, but this was murder
In the first degree.
Yeah,
Premeditated murder.
this was planned well by Scar, and he murders his brother. That's up there. And Mufasa dying, I mean, it's huge. It's obviously it sets the rest of the movie up. From that point on, Simba is no longer on the path to being king. He is now the person responsible for killing his father and the king. And it completely changes him as a character. I mean, the character going forward is completely different than what you saw before.
Oh, 100%. He ultimately gives up on everything. So this takes us to Scar's speech in front of everyone. I'm the new king. Simba's dead. Mufasa's dead. Here we go. Again, no male lions around, so I'm assuming Scar either decides to smash everything or smash nothing. But that is another theory for another time. We get to the big moment here when Simba, asleep on the ground, is discovered by Timon and Pumbaa.
Yeah, the intro there is another great one. This is Timon and Pumbaa come running out, acting all crazy. They start throwing jokes out right away. You got a bunch of fart jokes. You can tell from this moment on, like, this movie's going to start getting fun again. Like,
it needed to pick me up, and they certainly brought it. You know, Timon, a meerkat, voiced by Nathan Lane, who at the time was also on a hot streak in the 90s and still to this day. I mean, Nathan Lane is fantastic. And then you have Pumbaa, who is voiced by, now this is a funny one, Mr. Kurosi from Saved by the Bell.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that I looked it up. So we initially for this episode talked about like, oh, why don't we get into voice acting, and we can talk about that later. But one of the things in looking this up, I'm like, how star-studded was the cast? I'm like, oh yeah, the guy who did the voice of Pumbaa, he's been in a bunch of stuff. No, he hasn't been in anything. He was on an episode of Seinfeld. He was in the movie In and Out. But he plays like the barber. He has one great scene in the movie, and then that's pretty much it. But then he was also for maybe 4 or 5 episodes of Saved by the Bell when they were working at a beach resort in the summer. He was Mr. Kurosi, and that was pretty much it. Pumbaa was his big role, and the only reason I know that is because he also voiced Pumbaa in every sequel there was that I saw on IMDb. When you are stuck in that role for the rest of your run, that's pretty much it, man.
That's bad. I mean, that's bad. You don't want to reprise your animated role unless you're Tom Hanks and you're doing 3 sequels in Toy Story. I mean, I think that's okay.
Yeah, but you're Tom Hanks. You're
Tom Hanks.
Arguably the greatest actor of the past 40 years.
You choose your own roles at that point. If you want to do Toy Story 5, you just do it. Getting back to
Lion King,
getting back to the cast. This cast is up there with any animated film ever. Like off the top of my head, just thinking of other animated films. We just mentioned Toy Story, which obviously had a bunch of A-listers. But when you see The Lion King, which was the last of those great early to mid 90s animated classics. You had Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and then you had Lion King came last, right? All of those movies before it maybe had one or two really great actors. What comes to mind is Robin Williams in Aladdin. But you get to Lion King, you've got studs everywhere. Not to mention the Elton John factor of the soundtrack. So you've got Elton John doing the soundtrack. You've got James Earl Jones. You've got Jeremy Irons. You've got, at the time, JTT, who is huge.
Yeah, so JTT being Jonathan Taylor Thomas, not Justin Timberlake. Jonathan Taylor Thomas. I had to work that in. Yeah, Jonathan Taylor Thomas was one of the three sons on the hit TV show Home Improvement, which Tim Allen, the voice of Buzz Lightyear, was the dad. He hosted a show called Tool Time, but he was a Bob Vila type. And now I'm throwing out references to the 90s that certain listeners may be like, ooh.
Hopefully no one born like after 1994 is listening to this.
Right. So he was a home improvement type guy. He would, hence the name of the show. But then they also took it home where it was his wife and his kids, and he had three sons. And the middle son was Jonathan Taylor Thomas. And Jonathan Taylor Thomas, when I was 11 years old, 12 years old, I was, getting into middle school. He was the poster within every girl's locker. He was on the cover of Tiger Beat magazine. And the way he was written on Home Improvement was very sarcastic. He was the funny one and the smart one of the three sons on the show. And he had one of those voices. He just had a good kid voice, a little raspy, and that's how he sounded. And with that, they gave him the role of Simba in The Lion King. So he played young Simba throughout the first half of the movie.
Yeah. He, for the first 45 minutes, he was Simba, and he was the smart aleck kid on Home Improvement. And he was at the time, he was everywhere. He was getting movie deals. He was doing stuff on the side. He wasn't just doing Home Improvement. I believe he played like a 8-9-year-old, but in reality, he was probably like 16 or 17. He's one of those kids that I feel like he was much older than he played, and he kind of outgrew that role over time because they tried to just keep those kids as young as possible on the show, which in the 90s sitcoms, the kids grew up. They're not all The Simpsons where you could just have the kids the same age forever. But yeah, so he did Lion King, and he was part of this just all-star cast. I mean, all-star.
Then we have James Earl Jones, the voice of Mufasa, famously the voice of Darth Vader.
Yeah, I mean, the scene where he comes back in the cloud and says, like, Simba, remember who you are, is such, that's iconic. His voice is iconic. What's actually cool, you brought up the Star Wars of Darth Vader. It's actually kind of cool that in, I guess it's Return of the Jedi, where Luke goes into the cave and he has to face off against Darth Vader, but he's not really there. It's kind of similar here where Rafiki kind of leads Simba into this weird kind of cave vine thing, and he runs through, and then he encounters Mufasa, which is voiced by James Earl Jones. So it's kind of cool, the little Star Wars linkage there. I don't know if it was intentional, but it's something I picked up on now as an adult, which obviously I had no idea about when I was a kid. So when Mufasa shows up again in the cloud and, he's telling Simba, you got to go back.
We're back. We're still at Hakuna Matata, Jeff.
We didn't even cover Hakuna Matata?
No, we didn't cover Hakuna Matata. The best fart joke in Disney history. That's what that song ultimately is. And it hurts that my friends never stood downwind. And then he does the fart. And it got downhearted every time that I, Pumbaa, not in front of the kids. Oh, sorry. And then Hakuna Matata.
Actually, growing up, I always thought that was not in front of the kid. I thought he was talking just about Simba. Watching it as an adult, what I noticed was he said, not in front of the kids, and looks right at you, looks at the camera, or I guess the camera. I don't know. There's some little meerkat that they got to do all these lines. No, so they broke the fourth wall, which I never really thought of as a kid. So that was something else I kind of picked up on here, was not in front of the kids looking at us. Let's not be too vulgar.
Right. It was pretty much the entire shtick of the genie in Aladdin was breaking the fourth wall. So they were onto that. So here's a big thing with Simba at this point, and something I wrote down because I thought it was important. Simba's like, I'm hungry. You got any antelope? I need to eat some meat. I'm a lion. I'm growing. This is how lions work. We're carnivores. And they're like, hey, yeah, no, we're going to eat grub. Well, what's a grub? This is a grub. And then they start giving him bugs, big, fat, juicy looking bugs. Problem is, when they get to Simba being an adult male lion, how malnourished would he actually be? Because I looked it up. Lions eat 11 to 15 pounds of meat every 2 days. Every 2 days, they have to ingest 11 to 15 pounds of meat to survive. How many bugs?
Did you do the math on how many bugs that would be? Because that would have been impressive.
No, I didn't, and I wish I had.
But even if the average bug, like a handful of bugs is a...
I wish I had a producer. This is what happens when you eventually get good at this. You get a producer and they look it up for you. And some guy who doesn't have a voice for radio chimes in. He's like, he would need to eat 116 bugs in a day to make those numbers.
He's got to eat a ton of bugs. They're living in a forest. I mean, they lift up that log. There's a million bugs under there. I think he's probably fine. But when you do cut to the end, when you have this adult Simba, he is much leaner than Mufasa. I mean, he's noticeably smaller than Mufasa was.
Yeah, and I think that might be what gives Scar a fighting chance when they actually get into their confrontation later. But in 2 weeks, though, Simba would probably eat Timon and Pumbaa.
He would probably do it like in his sleep, right? Like he would wake up and not even think about it, and he would just eat Pumbaa.
Yeah. So one of the bugs, I'm doing the math here. So one dung beetle, which is one of the bugs that they show in the movie as a grub, weighs almost 1 ounce. So to do 11 pounds, he would have to eat 176 fully grown dung beetles.
I mean, that's
maybe
doable.
More because it's a little under a pound, like 3/4 of a pound.
That's doable.
Or 3/4 of an ounce. I'm sorry, 3/4 of an ounce. So maybe 180 to 200 dung beetles every 2 days. He would single-handedly wipe out the dung beetle population in Africa.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why there's a food chain and a circle of life, and that's not. If you know, I'm flipping through my pages. I have my reference book here. It's the whole Lion King children's book. Apparently, it belonged to my brother-in-law because Patrick Brennan is right there on the thing. It's very thorough, and you can see noticeably that Simba is smaller than Mufasa. He's malnourished. For sure.
He has to be. He has to be like one of the animals in the Tiger King documentary when things were starting to get bad for Joe Exotic over there. Anyway, we cut to the future. We got fully grown Matthew Broderick, Ferris Bueller. We're talking about the voice actors here. Ferris Bueller voicing Simba. Another stud, right? We're talking about a loaded cast. That's another big get for them. Another good Broadway actor, Matthew Broderick. He voices Simba, and they're sitting there talking about the stars in the sky. Pumbaa and Timon hit I thought they were big balls of gas burning billions of miles away. Pumbaa, with you, everything is gas. It's like, I get it, because Pumbaa was right, even though he's...
Right, he was right, and I didn't like that. I never liked those kinds of jokes when I was a kid. Like, I always remember asking my dad, like, but he's right. Like, I don't get it. That's not funny. Aren't they really balls of gas? That's what I learned in school. So I never really liked those jokes.
So you're Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy, basically.
Yeah, it gets me. Basically. Everything's literal. It's like, that's not funny. That's not a funny joke because that's what it is. So I don't get it. But I do appreciate the Timon joke, which a fart joke I get every time.
Oh, yeah. You can't miss on fart jokes. They're always a hit. With this scene, though, Timon and Pumbaa are sitting there looking up at the stars of the sky, and Simba, heartfelt, remembering his dad, who he watched die in front of him, is emotional and talking about, I was told that they were the kings of the past watching over us. And Timon is like, what mook told you that? You got to be kidding me. Totally just craps on it and makes Simba feel bad about himself. Just completely oblivious. Horrible.
Yeah, like you don't know his past. You don't know who told him that. You never once asked him about his past, or he just never wanted to talk about it at all, which I guess is the case. But from what we know about Timon and Pumbaa, it doesn't seem like the kind of guy who's going to be like, hey, so what brought you here? They only cared about him protecting them, right? From the beginning. like, oh, it'd be good to have a lion around. If anyone comes around, we'll have him. And that is obviously that's what happens when Nala shows up later as an adult. He protects them. Otherwise, they would have been dead.
You're 100% correct. So I guess our conclusion is that Timon and Pumbaa, or maybe Timon because he was the brains of the group, or so he thought, were using Simba.
Yeah, they're not friends.
Horrible. And to the point where this also leads to Simba sadly walking off and thumping down into the grass. And this is the infamous Disney lewd joke worked into the animated movie theory that the word sex appears in the dust and the pollen and whatever it is that pops up from the grass. It forms the word sex on screen. Now, this has always been a theory. There was always the kid in school who's like, did you know it says sex in the movie? Did you know they worked that in? You're like, no, it doesn't. You want the Lion King to be wholesome, so you watch. You kind of see it, but you can get how that could accidentally have happened. And I don't know whether it's been debunked or not. However, on Disney Plus, when you watch it, they do cut away from that shot quicker than they did in the original VHS version, which tells me that it was there. That validates the theory. Why? Otherwise, why do you cut it out?
Yeah, I don't think it was there. So that was always a big topic. Kids at school, like whatever, they would talk about, oh, did you pause at the right spot, you could see sex. And I was always like, I don't know if it's there. And I would pause it, and obviously we'd go frame by frame by frame. And honestly, I don't think it was there. I think they may have cut it out in the new version, because I actually, rewatching it now, I did pause it, and I tried to see if I can see anything. It looks the same to me. I don't know if they did edit it, but if they did, it was probably just to squash any of the controversy and just say, it's not there, we're cutting away, we're not going to let you try to find it. So it's going to ruin that urban legend, I guess, for the future generations. They're not going to have the sex cloud.
The sex cloud. Who's going out and buying a VHS or DVD of The Lion King in 2020?
Well, I have the VHS, but I don't have VCR to actually play it.
I do. I have a VCR.
Well, I mean, here we go.
So anyway, that leads to Rafiki somehow getting his hands on the dust that came up from when Simba lay down and realized Simba is alive. Dun, dun, dun. Mm-hmm. That also leads to the next scene where Timon and Pumbaa and Simba or actually just Timon and Pumbaa are out wandering through the jungle and doing the Awi Moet, in the mighty jungle.
It was more fun in the movie.
Yeah, sorry. I'm drinking here. I'm on my third glass of scotch, but very self-referential kind of thing, because how else do they know that song? And then that's when Nala shows up because she is starving and hunting for food, and Simba gets involved and realizes, oh my God, you're alive. Oh my God, Nala, I haven't seen you in forever. What are you doing here? And then they fall in love immediately, and we get Can You Feel the Love Tonight?
They fall back in love, right? Like they were best friends. They were betrothed. They were the only two children in that whole pride, if you remember. There weren't any other kids. They were basically the only other cub that they had to play with. When she finally shows up, it's, well, this is my best friend Nala and the whole bit. So he definitely remembers her really, really well. He does not remember Rafiki when Rafiki shows up. No idea who Rafiki is.
No, but real quick on the Nala thing. When Nala's like, you need to come back. Scar ruined everything. He looks at her and he goes, Hakuna Matata. And she's like, what the hell's that supposed to mean? And he says, it means no worries. Your past is your past, and just, it is what it is. Forget about it and move on and go on with your life. Whatever he says. But that in that moment when he says that, it made me realize that the most famous song from the movie, Hakuna Matata, is really a song for defeatist quitters.
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's leave your past behind you. You can't do anything about it. So just move on and really just go backpacking in Europe for a year. Take a year off from college. This is a kid who Simba's just completely abandoned his responsibilities and Hakuna Matata. I'm done. It's not my problem.
Yeah, Simba is a spoiled rich kid. He is the son of a king. He's a prince who decides, you know what, life ain't for me. I'm just going to kind of just wing it and do my own thing. Oh, if everyone else were so lucky. You're a lion. You could literally do anything you want.
They even say that, right? They're like, hey, he's at the top of the food chain. Nothing's eating him. He has the ultimate jungle privilege.
So Nala shows up.
Sorry to cut you off, but she shows up. They realize that they know each other, right? Then they go off on their own. Timon and Pumbaa start singing the Can You Feel the Love Tonight song, which is the backdrop throughout this whole scene. Then they start wrestling around together like they used to. It's cute. It's all this stuff. Like, oh, they're little kids. They're having fun again. Then they start rolling down the hill the same way they rolled down the hill at the elephant graveyard earlier in the movie.
Right. Yeah, innocent.
It's a nice callback. It's a callback to when they were kids. But then Simba winds up on top of Nala, setting up the most awkward movie moment ever. Because then Nala looks at him with these like F me eyes that just... it's super awkward, and it comes out of nowhere.
Big time. I can see, like, it's embedded in my brain. I can see the look on Nala's face, like, yes, Simba, we're going to do this.
Like, I'm going to lick your face, and then you and I are having sex. Like, it's going to happen.
So can I, as you bring this up, this reminds me. When I was a kid, around the time that The Lion King came out, and I don't mean to hijack your point, but so Jeff and I went to college in Philadelphia. I grew up just outside of Philadelphia. Jeff grew up in North Jersey, right? I would always go to the Philadelphia Zoo with my family. In 1992 or 1993, my mom took me, my sister, and my cousin to the Philadelphia Zoo. I always wanted to see the lions. I've always been fascinated by lions. And we get to the lion exhibit, and it's Christmas time. So it was like they were doing some Christmas thing at the zoo with all these lights. So all the animals were indoors, and they have an indoor area had an indoor area in the Philadelphia Zoo where you'd go and see the lions in their small little enclosure.
Yeah, their natural habitat.
Yeah, right. There was this massive crowd around where we knew the two big lions to be. And we go over there, and the male lion is straight pile driving the female white lion. They had a white lion at the zoo. He is unfortunately destroying this poor lion. You would never know that by looking at her because she might as well have been reading a comic book. But the male lion is just going to town. And I'm 9, and I probably shouldn't have known what I was seeing, but I knew. And of course, I stoke the fire and turn to my mother and say, "Mom, what are they doing?" And she says, they're just playing. They're just playing." Yeah.
What they're doing is exactly what Nala and Simba were doing off camera 1 minute after that scene. And I guess Timon and Pumbaa stopped singing for a while and let them just go at it. And then they came back to the song like 20 minutes later.
Yeah. So that.
Can you feel? Were they having sex during Timon and Pumbaa's like part of that song at the end? Is that why they stopped singing?
Do you think Timon turned to Pumbaa and was like, just look over there for a minute. Don't pay attention to them.
Yeah, I mean, he's trying the whole time. Timon trying to explain to Pumbaa what's going on. He should just look at him. Like, how is it not obvious?
Pumbaa was me at 9 years old going, "What are they doing?
What are they doing?" And Timon's like, "Can you feel?"
And if he falls in love tonight, yeah, no, that's that. And sure enough, I think a lion like 4, 5, 6 months later. I know it's not 9 months, but something along those lines. 2 white lion cubs were born and being advertised at being at the Philadelphia Zoo.
Yeah, Kimba was born at the Philadelphia Zoo. Yeah. But that's also what happened with Rafiki at the end of the movie. He's holding up a cub. Like, hey, that was out of wedlock. And clearly they get married. Zazu already establishes that there is a procedure here. There is a process. There's a ceremony. Lions get married in The Lion King. This was out of wedlock.
To your point, though, the Nala eyes, the look that Nala gives him in that weird, awkward moment, that is stuck with me all these years. Like as we're talking about, I can literally see it. It's weird.
It's crazy that what you think are Simba's best friends, Timon and Pumbaa, are really just using him, completely using him. They're using him for protection. They come to like him, right? But they never really get to know him. They just want him to acclimate to them. And then when they finally find out he's king, Pumbaa starts groveling. He can't believe, oh, you're a king, your majesty. And Timon is like, oh my God, he's got power. He is the king. How did we not know this? Well, maybe if you asked your best friend that you've been living with for the last how many years? I don't know. What is it, like 2 or 3 years probably that he's out there in exile?
Literally ask him anything.
Just talk to him. You talk about the stars. You start talking about the stars with your friends when you've got nothing else to learn about them.
Have we ever talked about the stars, Jeff?
No, because I don't want to know any more about you than I already do.
That wasn't very nice.
I know more than
you
enough.
Definitely do know more than enough. Mufasa forms in the clouds. Famous scene, right? Simba. To the point where it was parodied on The Simpsons, you alluded to earlier.
Yes.
Where he called him Kimba. Now, the joke there is that the Lion King was ripped off heavily from a Japanese anime cartoon called Kimba the White Lion, which had been around, I believe, since the 70s or 80s or what have you. Either way, and I won't spend too much time on it because at first I looked at the videos and things were, oh, did the Lion King steal from Kimba? Yes, it seemed like there were a lot of liberties taken, especially with the name Simba and Kimba. However, Simba in Swahili literally means lion.
Oh, man, they really caught a break there.
But among the others, Kimba was a TV series that lasted for several thousand hours of story. Eventually, 1 or 2 things are going to overlap with the 90-minute Lion King versus 1,000+ hours of Simba the White Lion.
The whole Simpsons did it. If you're on long enough, you're going to do everything. But they took a lot of liberties, and they definitely took some of the aspects of Kimba the White Lion from what I've always heard growing up. And I only know about that because of that Simpsons joke.
Well, what's funny is Matthew Broderick, apparently, when he was cast for the role of Simba, was going around telling people, oh, yeah, I'm doing Kimba, the White Lion, you know, the cartoon from when we were kids.
Because I think originally he was supposed to be called Kimba. And that I think they've denied that. Disney has then denied it. But that shows you that originally his name was going to be Kimba, and it was going to be based on that cartoon. But who knows? Well, we're not going to know the answer to that one.
Back to the plot of the movie, because we're just about wrapping up here. They get to the Pride Lands, and the Pride Lands are a mess, right? Scar's running the show, which coincidentally is the opening plot to Moana, where King Tui is basically like, there's no fish. We ravaged the ocean around here within the reef. We got nothing, guys. And no, you're not allowed to leave the reef to get it, which is basically what Scar says. They're like, look, the herds have moved on. We need to move. We need to go somewhere else. And he's like, absolutely not. So Scar's in control. Simba and friends hatch a plan to get back to the Pride Lands and overtake Scar and all of his hyena friends. There's still no other male lions to defend Scar or even team up with Simba. Again, I keep coming back to that because it's bothering me. But Simba gets into it with Scar. They start to fight. You get the line from Simba, "You don't deserve to live." He actually says that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't deserve to live.
What's cool about that interaction at the end is Simba kind of reverts back to that little kid for a minute. Like Scar can still manipulate him. Like when he thought it was Mufasa back from the dead, he was cowering. He was done.
Crapped his pants.
Then he realized, oh, it's Simba. I know how to manipulate this kid. I've been occupying space in his head that he didn't even know existed. And I am going to completely own him mentally, right? Like I'm going to outsmart Simba.
Yeah.
He's going away, but he's still that little kid to me, and he's still going to see me as that little kid. To the point where Simba still thinks he killed Mufasa. He had nothing to do with this. But he still believes it. Like after all this time reflecting on that day and having it eaten away, he never puts it together that Scar is the mastermind behind it all.
Yeah, not once. He still hasn't figured out. Scar has to actually verbally say, I killed Mufasa. Yeah, duh.
Duh. Everyone knows that. Just go ask Zazu. He was there, and you kept him alive. Right here. He can tell you everything that happened until you knocked him out cold. He knows that you set this whole thing in motion. You went and got Mufasa. You were out there with Simba. Like, remember, his main job is to keep Simba safe. Simba doesn't leave that pride without Zazu knowing. Scar must have told Zazu, hey, I'm going to take Simba with me. Like, I got something I want to do with him. And then he tells Simba, you got to wait here on this rock for your dad to show up. And then Scar's the one who goes and gets Mufasa. Zazu knows all of this. He can put it all together, yet he keeps him alive. Again, it's just asinine. But you're right. The only time Simba actually puts it together is when he admits it, which is a classic bad guy trope, right? Why are you explaining your whole plot? Why are you admitting guilt to the one person who can do something about it, where Simba comes out of nowhere and just leaps from the cliff, pins him down, and makes him admit that he actually is the one who killed Mufasa? Like, classic bad guy trope, classic James Bond villain, which is why I love Scar so much, because he fits into so many of those little categories of just perfect villain because he's so perfectly bad at being a villain.
That's what makes a villain great too, is not so much that, there's a lot of people who see movies and they're like, sometimes I root for the bad guy to win. I want the bad guy to win. I get that. And it's fun. You get to Avengers Infinity War and Thanos being awesome and just really great in every scene that he's in. And spoiler alert, he wins. Scar, however, where, as you're saying, Jeff, with him being the classic Bond villain where he's over explaining what he wants to do. He talks too much, but then he executes his plan to a degree and then he slips up somewhere else, but he can't, his hubris is there where he can't help but say, I killed Mufasa. Or long live the king. All these different things that Scar does, that's what makes a good villain great, because even with their faults, they're still enjoyable. A likable bad guy is what Scar ultimately becomes and what he is throughout the movie. He's just fantastic from start to finish. And speaking of finish, Scar ultimately gets into it in slow motion action, trading blows with Simba, with fire happening around them. By the way, this is a great point you brought up on Facebook recently and is arguably the catalyst for us doing this podcast, is the fact that the Pride Lands were ravaged. They were dried out. There was no plant life, no animals. There was no plant life. Therefore, there were no animals to stick around for them to eat, which circle of life, right? If they had just waited maybe an hour, the rain comes and puts out the fire.
Simba showed up during a thunderstorm. He picked the exact right time. You get some lightning, causes some fire. Rain's coming. It's already on its way. All the herds came back almost immediately. I mean, by the time, I don't know how long it takes for a cub to be born, but within the time it took Simba and Nala to get down and have a kid, it's all back to normal. Like, not just getting back to normal, it's fully back to where it was at the beginning of the movie. That's a short time. Now, did that all happen because it rained that one day? I mean, maybe. Would it have rained if Simba didn't show up? You can't say that, right? Because it's rain.
Yes, it's rain. It would have happened if Simba hadn't shown up. So Scar ultimately may have been redeemed if Simba hadn't shown up.
Scar was right. Scar ultimately was a good leader in that regard. Like, he didn't want to leave the Pride Lands. He wanted to maintain the home. They had a nice little rock. They had this nice little cave. He's got that cage for Zazu. All the hyenas got a little perch so that they can look ominously down on all the lions. It was built perfectly for Scar and his pride. Why leave? It's gonna rain tomorrow. Just wait it out one more day.
Yeah, because how else did Simba get everything back to normal? It's not like Simba was like, okay, guys, I've been eating grubs since I was a toddler. Let's just do that for a while. Trust me, the elephants, the antelope, the zebra, the wildebeest, everything that we eat, they'll come back. Trust me. Just give it a few rainfalls.
Yeah, we got to give them time to repopulate. We're going to eat some grubs. Timon's going to run back and get you like the really good, the green-filled kind, whatever he says in the beginning. We're going to bring back really nice grubs, and we're going to eat those for a while. We're going to kick all these hyenas out. We're going to banish them back to the elephant graveyard. Everything's good. And it's just ridiculous, right? Like there's no way for him to build up all those herds again or bring them back. Like, did he run his campaign on the whole we're going to eat grubs ticket? Like, is eat grubs and no antelope, promise I won't eat you. It's ridiculous.
It is absolutely ridiculous. I think Scar would have been okay had, Nala never. But then again, you could argue that the reason Nala went into the territory where Simba was is because they had no food in their area. She had to go to outside areas to try to find that food, and therefore she ran into Simba, which brought him back. I mean, Scar was a jerk at the end of the day, but anyway, speaking of Scar, we get into that final fight I mentioned, slow motion. They're throwing blows at each other. There's fire, and then Scar leaps through the fire at Simba. We get a monkey flip from Simba, which sends Scar off a cliff, which should have been the end. Scar ends up down there, and you're like, oh, Scar's totally done. He just ate it like Mufasa. And how's that? And then, nope, Scar's okay, but then all of the hyenas heard Scar say that they were the ones responsible. He blamed them, and then the hyenas eat Scar, which arguably is the most violent end in Disney history if you've ever seen an Animal Planet documentary on hyenas versus lions, because, it's ugly.
Yeah, I've never seen it in real life, but that scene I remember as a kid knowing like, he's done. Those hyenas just rip into him really quick. Yeah, I mean, the fall could have killed him. The fire could have killed him. You can even argue at the end of that scene that the fire actually kills all of them. Like that all the hyenas down there have now been burnt up. They may all be gone. Who knows? Even getting to that point, like Scar is so meticulous with his planning to a fault, to the point where he plans out where he's going to watch the murder from, but not actually just do it himself. He is totally planned out through the whole movie. Then he gets put in a position where Simba just shows up. Like he can't plan for that. He thinks he's dead. It's not in his plan. So now he shows up and he realizes the only way I can beat him is if I do a dirty shot. He throws some embers in his face. And that's where he decides, I'm going to try to take him on. Like maybe he's not as strong as Mufasa. Maybe I can take him. He's been out there eating grubs for however long. Maybe I can be the alpha male. And that's where Scar finally takes on, like, I'm not just going to run. I'm not just going to, match wits with someone. I'm going to go toe to toe. Let's see who can win this fight. And ultimately, obviously, he loses.
Yeah, but you know what? Scar stood in there long enough. And I think a big reason for that is Simba's steady diet of bugs. But that being said, end of the movie. Circle of life happens. Simba and Nala end up together. We end up getting the Pride Lands back to where it was, and Rafiki raises from what you've told me, the daughter of Simba and Nala in front of everyone, and we have the Circle of Life all over again, and that is the end of The Lion King, and that's how we wrapped it up.
Although in the book, it does say that he's holding up the future king. So in the book, he's the king. So the firstborn in the book adaptation of the movie is a future king. In the show, The Lion Guard is a girl, future queen, which means obviously the firstborn didn't make it. So,
that's terrible.
It just happens, It's the circle of life. He became the grass, and then the antelope ate the grass, and then Elton John ate the antelope, and we go from there.
I didn't like that, Jeff. As you sip your Maker's Mark, and I'm pouring my fourth glass of scotch, as you can probably tell by the gradual slurring in our speech, as we get to the end of this debut episode of the show that will either be called Dads on Disney, Disney Under the Influence, or Disney on the Rocks. That is up to you to decide. Next week, we're going to be talking about very controversial movie that Jeff just recently watched and I haven't seen since I was a kid. And that is none other than Peter Pan.
Peter Pan is just horrifying. Watching it as an adult, absolutely horrifying. Every scene in that movie needs to just be gone. Like if that was written today, it would be 3 minutes long. That would be all you would have left after you cut away all the inappropriate, unusable content. So that's where I'll leave it. We'll talk more in depth next week. I'll give Eric a chance to watch it as an adult, rewatch it. Absolutely horrifying.
I can't wait. I'm super excited about it.
It's going to be a really difficult episode. Like it's going to be hard to talk about it. It's that bad.
But that's what we're all about here. We're trying to dig into the controversy surrounding these movies, the bullet points, the adult thoughts that go into the stories. I mean, obviously, Disney's been doing this since the late 1930s from an animation perspective, and we're here to talk about it. I mean, that Disney Plus has given us a gateway to all of this content, and we're excited about it. So we're going to be trying to bring this to you every week if we can. We're pumped. On behalf of Jeff, I'm Eric. This is our podcast. We're talking about Disney, and we look forward to talking to you next week. Have a good one.